I'm onto your plan, Khan. You still don't have the beryllium sphere, and without it, you can't complete the bomb. Besides, you know I'm gonna stop you.
You Americans are so arrogant. You think your meaningless decadent country is the new cradle of civilization. But let me tell you something.
That's the US of A you're talking about, pal.
I am talking about ruling the world.
This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1897, retro movie review, The Shadow, and the best of 2022 results. And welcome to the show. I'm Matt.
I'm Ian Levinstein.
I'm Shane Kelly.
And I'm Adam Murdo. And Shane, my friend, you are on screen displaying collectibles for the wrong retro movie review.
I know. I don't have any shadow figures.
What were those figures of for
the black hole? The black hole. Maximilian and Vincent.
Nice. Well,
which I saw in the drive-in theater when I was a kid.
Ooh,
yes, indeed.
That sounds like fun.
It was cool.
Nice. Mr. Chris Epperly will hopefully be joining us shortly, but we wanted to get these festivities going, so hopefully he will be here sooner than later. But Matt, super happy you could join us for this retro movie review, since it's kind of in your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. It is. At one point, there was, I think, a spin-off series that dealt with pulp characters, and The Shadow, I believe,
there was
the inaugural episode.
Yep.
Comics with or without pulp.
Indeed.
That's right.
It's a matter of record, Matt, and you hosted it.
Mm-hmm. Last episode came out on July 31st, 2014, and was all about Miss Fury.
I think I have another one or two teed up. It's just a question that what's weird is every time you guys bring me out of mothballs to be with you, I think I'm going to get a mic, and I'm going to work on recording those and then send it to you, that when you need them, you have it. And then other stuff winds up happening, and it's just like, nah. So it's a little bit of a hiatus, but
it's not the longest hiatus that this podcast has had in between episodes. So
this is true.
So yeah, let's put it in mothballs for now, and then whenever you get an opportunity, then we can take it out of mothballs and make the magic happen.
Mm-hmm. Whenever both the kids are off to college,
Yeah. One of the episodes Fee was on, I remember she was, I think, making some sounds in the background.
Oh, yep.
I forget which episode that was, though.
Yep. Well, that is a time-honored tradition of ours to have somebody or something making sounds in the background, whether it be a baby, whether it be a dog, whether it be anything of the sort, whether it be random sirens in the background. It doesn't matter. That's all part of the recording.
Yep.
Well, before we get started here, of course, a reminder that you fine listeners over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak keep these wheels a-turning. Boop. And we thank you so much for your continued support of the show in any way that you can give it. For as little as $1 a month, you can join us over at the Patreon. And whenever we have the opportunity to release anything special for you guys, there is even a feed, the RSS feed that you can set up if you do indeed join, that you can partake in. For some reason, you're not a Patreon guy and you still want to donate, you can still do it the old-fashioned way via PayPal over at the website, comicgeekspeak.com/donate.php. But only donate if you have the money to do so. If you do not, then feel free to just spread the word about the show. Even after all these years, we're still getting new listeners, and we're always happy to see when somebody says, "Hey, my friend told us about you, and I started listening to it." Then that's a joy for us. It really is. So thank you so much for any support you can give. Patreon.com/comicgeekspeak and elsewhere. All right. And we will get to the best of after movie review tonight. So stay tuned for the results, which will be at the end of today. But I'm just glad that we get another episode with Mustached Murd.
Yes. The villainous schoolmaster.
Part 2 of 2.
Indeed.
After we record this, the second and last weekend of The Sound of Music happens, and this thing comes off just as soon as I can, because I've been told it's a good look, but it's prickly. And
yeah. No, been there, done that many a time myself. Unless you have a good trimmer, it gets very, very prickly very, very fast.
Yeah. I guess my trimmer is good enough for the sideburns, but this is just not. Yeah.
I think last year I had a mustache for a week. I didn't like it, but I kept it because Meg hated it. So I thought I could go as far as I could trolling her. And I think it was either Christmas or Easter I wound up shaving off because I knew we'd be doing some family stuff.
But
that's why I kept my mustache as a bear poking stick, basically.
That's why I kept the original goatee years ago. Was Carlene hated? I'm like, well, I'll just see how long I can go with it.
I still have very fond memories of you with that initial goatee, Shane.
When it was all nice and dark colored, not gray.
Yep.
I have a couple velvet sport coats in different colors. And every time I get compliments on it, I always like to point out to Meg that I got a compliment on it because she hates them. So that's why I have like 5 of them.
Oh man, good times, good times.
It's the little things.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the little things in life, the little things. Well, let's get it going here with a little thing called The Shadow, a 1994 film that was released, starring the fastest gun in the West, Alec Baldwin. I'm sorry, and it's obviously based on the original, pulp. First a radio serial, then later, comic books and many other forms of media along the way. And Matt, I do need to start with you because you're the shadow historian of all of us here. What were your initial thoughts on the movie, and how do you feel about it today?
Just to backtrack, I believe it was novelization first.
Oh, novelization first,
and then the radio.
Got it.
Yeah, but anyway. So, Adam, we saw this in the theater together, didn't we?
That is absolutely correct. I remember.
Okay, I know I still have my ticket stub from it.
Oh, I don't. But I remember you liked it more than I did. Yeah, we were 15 at the time. We couldn't drive ourselves. Our dads had to take us.
Yeah. I think at the time, I really enjoyed it. And because I heard about this, there's a lot of different aspects of the character that was new to me that I thought was extremely cool.
Yeah.
And then since then, if I had to look at the pulp, what I consider pulp era movies, I would not put this. This would probably be number 5 in the top 5. Unfortunately, the novelization is so much better.
Yeah,
but there's I didn't realize all the liberties that they took with this book, with the movie that wasn't really lore before. But it's something I can sit down and I do find watchable. And aside from really the third act, I guess the main thing that irritates me is I want to see the shadow. Yeah. I don't want to see, Lamont Cranston, as they put it in the movie. So in the third act, you want to see the shadow fight Shi-Wan Khan. You don't want to see Lamont fight Shi-Wan Khan.
Yeah.
The novelization is not that way. It's the way it should be. So I do think it's enjoyable. They have aspects to the character that they kind of developed that I thought was very cool, and I still, in my mind, that defines what the shadow should be. So yeah.
All right, fair enough. Murd, have you seen it since you saw it in the movie theater with Matt?
I think this is the 3rd time I've seen it. And I can say that my dad has been present for all 3 of these watchings because, as I said, my dad, Jim, and Matt's dad, Wade, took us to the theater and sat several rows behind us in 1994. So it was like a guy's night out. And then I'm pretty sure that down in Stone Harbor, we caught it on TNT late at night, maybe 10 years ago. And then last night I watched it over at my folks' place, and My father, every time he's seen it, he has forgot it instantly. Because he swears up and down he hasn't seen it, but I know for a fact that he's seen it twice before, as I have seen it twice before.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that the first time when Matt and I saw it in the theater in '94, my opinion of it was that it was pretty cheesy but enjoyable. I think once it was all said and done, Matt immediately started gushing over it, and I started poking holes in it. And I stand by that remark, that reaction, cheesy but enjoyable. If anything, I remain ignorant to a lot of the Shadow lore. Now, Matt says that his enjoyment of the film today is hampered by what he now knows about the character's background and how much of it was overlooked by the filmmakers here. I've never read any of the pulp literature about the Shadow. I've read only like a couple of comic books featuring the character. But that would probably I'd probably take a dimmer view of it if I had read some of that stuff. But as it is, I actually think I enjoy it a little bit more as a 40-something-year-old adult than I did at 15. Because I appreciate the retroism of it, just as a filmic invocation of a prior decade. I would put it in a class with that little spate of invocations of like 1930s and 40s that happened in the late 70s and early 80s, including things like Indiana Jones or Annie and so forth, or even like Flash Gordon. So yeah, It held up better than I thought it would, to be honest. The effects stood the test of time, with the exception of a few patches of dodgy CGI here and there. Yeah, I liked the period touches, like the fashion and hairstyles. Penelope Ann Miller looked good as like a bombshell of the period. Yeah, all in all, and Alec Baldwin does turn in a pretty good performance. I can think of some actors nowadays who would probably be better as the Shadow, but I think he was probably the right person to be the leading man for this film project at this time.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, why don't you just get Bryan Cranston to play him? I mean, he's already got the last name.
Bryan Cranston could play almost anything.
That is very true. He could act most people under a table.
Power Ranger, for Christ's sake.
Yes, indeed. Yep. And they even named the Blue Ranger after Bryan Cranston. Billy Cranston is named that way because of Bryan Cranston.
Oh, yeah. He played Zordon, right?
He played Zordon in the more recent Power Rangers, the reboot. That came out a few years ago. In the original one, he was a rando costumed villain a couple of times running around, and I think he may have actually like doubled as one of the Power Rangers in one of the suits at one point. But that's all he did on the original show. Yep. And this has been a completely different segue into. We now return to the Shadow, already in progress. Chris, welcome to the episode,
gentlemen.
What are your thoughts, my friend?
So I was really looking forward to this for a couple reasons. One, I know Shane has always revered this film, and I always put a lot of stock in Shane's opinions. And I have a troubled relationship with this movie because I only saw it once in 1994 when it came out in the theater, and I couldn't stand it. And so in 1994, I was
22.
21, and a callow youth, ignorant, and I knew virtually nothing about the Shadow except that I knew that he was a pulp character, and that was it. I didn't even know he was an influence on Batman, for example. And by the way, as a quick little caveat, anyone wants to learn about the Shadow, go to Comics With or Without Pulp, the outstanding series of podcasts Matt did. He does an excellent overview of the entire history of the Shadow. So,
thank you.
You bet, brother. So it's been what, 30 years almost, something like that, since this movie came out. So
just about next 30 years.
I was really grooving to see this again because now I'm 50 and I know a bit more about the Shadow. I mean, I listen to Matt's podcast. I've read a lot of like more modern Shadow comics. I never read into the pulp stories though, as like Murd, but I just had a better understanding of the character. So I was looking forward to that. Alec Baldwin's one of my favorite actors. So I was eager to see him do it now through the eyes of someone who's me being far more aware and mature. So I went into the movie optimistic.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, my optimism was rewarded.
I
think for First of all, I forgot Russell Mulcahy of Highlander directed the movie. I totally forgot about
Yes.
that.
And this is now the second retro movie review
Yes.
that we've done with said director. So go figure.
Yes. See our listeners refer to our rollicking Highlander review, which was a lot of fun. So what I loved about the movie, and sure, before we get into all the breaking everything down, is that I felt like I was watching a 1930s pulp story come to life on the screen. Was it cheesy? Yes, because a lot of pulp was cheesy by today's standards.
Yep.
The look of the movie, the best part of the movie is the look. It is phenomenal. Like the way they captured, like the sheen of 1930s, not real New York, but noir pulp New York.
Oh my God! Yeah,
so well done.
I have thoughts and opinions for sure.
Yeah, and like everything, like you said, from Margot Lane's look to the nightclub, like those pneumatic tubes with all the messages going through them, the taxi cabs, everything was just spot on. And then also, I thought the Shadow costume was amazing. Like they did not cut any corners. It was the Shadow, and I thought it looked great. Well, a little bit I just caught of you guys. Like jump back in. I would have liked to have seen more of the actual Shadow in the film. But overall, I thought the ending was actually underwhelming, and we can talk about that more when we get into our greater discussion, like the final confrontation and all of that. But overall, I think it's a good time, man. Like it's not. I don't think it's one of the greatest comic adaptations ever made, but my 21-year-old self was a putz. Like this is, this is. I think this is a very honorable effort at adapting really one of the foundational characters of not just pulp, but of comics, essentially. So, and I really hope that someday, whether it's in a platform or in a film streaming platform, they return to this character because he deserves to be returned to.
Oh, definitely.
I'm sure many people don't realize without the Shadow, there is no Batman.
Absolutely.
Or Moonlight.
Or many other, vigilante type characters, really, who work in the shadows and so forth. So, no pun intended. So yeah, I was thoroughly entertained.
So Shane, if you don't mind, I'm going to go first, and then I'll go over to you last. I had swore up and down that I had seen this movie before, and then I put it on, and I had never seen this movie before, and I was confusing it in my head with the Phantom.
Ooh, a newbie.
Yeah, I was confusing it in my head with the Phantom, because the Phantom I've definitely seen before, because they used to air the Phantom all the damn time on cable TV. So whether I wanted to or not, I accidentally wound up, putting on the Phantom, and then I'd leave it on in the background. And, before I knew it, it was the end of the movie. So I've probably seen that one at least twice all the way through. I had never seen this before. I was 10 years old when it came out. I was not at the theater to see it. And I think I can lovingly describe this movie as the unholy union of 1966 Batman and 1989 Batman. I think
fair.
I think it has a lot of the camp of 1966 Batman, but it's also trying to capture the personality of 89 Batman, because that was still in the zeitgeist at the time. And obviously that was the tent pole of, big superhero movies that at least had a pulp feel to a point at that particular moment. And I agree that it also has the feel of an old school serial, but my main issue is that at times those two halves of the coin sort of fought each other, where they couldn't quite decide on how serious they wanted the actual movie to be. And it's to its detriment. It's far from a bad movie. I will say that. I enjoyed it for the most part. The matte paintings of New York City are pathetic, but that's
I found them charming.
That's part of the cheese.
It's part of the cheese, yeah. And frankly, I think it's because I've been to Universal Studios and I know what their backlot looks like. And this was filmed mostly in the New York portion of said backlot, like looking at the history of it all. That they did as well as they could with what they had. It was almost filmed entirely on a backlot. We know that. But it may also have been the transfer that I watched because I watched it on Vudu, and every single matte painting was just very washed out. Usually when it comes to matte painting,
that's weird.
I watched it on Vudu too, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, like I usually when it comes to matte paintings, there's at least a depth to them where it still feels like, because I mean we know what matte paintings look like. I mean just watch a Star Wars movie, and that's a perfect example. Like they're usually blended in well enough where it's hard to necessarily tell that what you're seeing is not real, but it didn't quite work for me. But I think overall, I like the shadow team of it all. The fact that he's got his agents all the way throughout the city, the fact that Peter Doyle's one of them is just mwah. Like anytime I see Peter Doyle on screen, I'm
Peter Boyle, my friend. Boyle.
Oh, sorry, Peter Boyle. My mistake. I knew I was going to do that the minute that I said it too.
Take that kiss back.
Yeah, there we go. Back it goes. Whenever I see young Frankenstein on screen, I'm a happy man. And yes, he's the father from Everybody Loves Raymond 2 and many other things. I also, there were also like people in this movie that I really was not expecting, like Ian McKellen going dry like this. And overall, I had a relatively good time for it, the cheese of it all and the fun of it all. I just wish that they had been able to balance it ever so slightly a little bit better. But what can you expect from 1994? I guess. Yeah. Shane?
I can remember seeing it in the theater. I loved it just because it was fun superhero Batmanish kind of character with a sanctum and gadgets and a network of helpers, and I loved it. Not only that, I liked, as some have said before, you look at the cast, it's Alec Baldwin, Penelope Ann Miller, Peter Boyle, Ian McKellen, Tim Curry, Jonathan Winters, of all things. Like out of the blue, never thought Jonathan Winters to be in something like this. And very straight-laced Jonathan Winters. No real comedy to it at all. No voices, no goofiness. Which I love, especially when he was Mork and Mindy's son, but that's a whole nother timeline there. But I enjoyed the movie. I always have. It's not the best movie in the world. It certainly has its problems, but I agree that the setting is fantastic. It looks like a pulp noirish 1930s to me. The costumes are great. I did find it when a friend of mine, I forget who even mentioned it years and years ago, that it's not a bad movie, but in the nightclub it's hard to hear Kenny G in the 1930s. And I'm like, oh, so I can't unhear that usually. But it's still a fun movie. I might watch it 2 or 3 times a year easily. Wow. I did do the disc to digital. I took my DVD copy and scanned the digital code and got it on Vudu, which then filtered over to my Apple account because I have them connected. So I'm able to watch it off of my Apple TV and all that. I have the Vudu stuff too, but it does seem, I will say, to be a little bit cleaner and easier to watch it on Apple. Yeah. It just looks better. And I don't really know why. It's this kind of the same digital copy, but it does.
It all depends. It all depends on the transfer and whatever the codec is. Like
it's crazy.
It can be up and down in quality. Yeah.
Because I started up here watching it on Vudu, and then I moved downstairs and I finished it on Apple, and it just looked better. But yeah, a lot of fun. It certainly has its problems, but again, between this, The Phantom, Dark Man, all kinds of stuff that was coming out in the early 90s, I enjoyed thoroughly. I know that I had listened to some old radio shows because I got some tape cassettes at the Smithsonian once on a field trip. I had gotten some Batman and Superman. Well, it was really Superman Adventures, but it featured Batman as well. So I knew of the Shadow from radio dramas really before this movie came out. And I knew of him in some comics, but I never read any up to that point. But to watch the movie, it was a lot of fun. And again, I still have fun with it to this day without missing a beat.
Yeah. And also James Hong in this movie, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Short-lived. He should have been in it longer. Oh,
agreed. Still working at the age of, what is it, like 92 or something like
90
that?
Something, yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Yep. I think that one of the best parts of this movie is to just see how many people I know were in this movie. Like even like bit characters.
Neelix. He's in it.
Ethan Phillips is the security
Ethan
guard.
Phillips,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
I first saw
He's
him
in everything
Benson.
too.
Yes.
I remember him from Benson with Renee, Auberge Noir.
Oh yeah. Yep. There's one character. I'll have to look up the name of the actor again. That I wasn't expecting to find in this, because he's been in this most recent season of Barry as a reporter, and he's one of those character actors that again just shows up in everything. I'll have to look up the name of the guy. But
Well, the lead gangster at the beginning was John Kapelos, who was the janitor in Breakfast Club.
Yeah. Yep.
nice.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
And in 16 Candles, he's the
16 Candles. He's the
fiance.
the boorish fiance. Yes.
Patrick Fischler, that's who I'm thinking of. Is in this movie he's the guy who jumps off the Empire State Building.
Okay.
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 Yeah, and he's one of those bit actors that again has been quite literally everything.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when you recognize,
Absolutely.
like he shows up in comedies, he shows up in dramas, he's an everyman. He's just that guy you cast in whatever you're gonna make. Also hard to believe that 6 years later X-Men came out. Thinking about Ian McKellen in this movie,
And you know, Ian, that's a great point, because we have to remember, if you were a comic fan of any kind and you wanted multimedia, there was no Marvel movies of any kind.
Yeah.
There was just terrible stuff on TV like Generation X.
And Nick Fury with David Hasselhoff.
Agent of Shield.
I'm hoping for a Secret Wars appearance by that.
That's the apex.
Oh my god!
But these movies were exciting because
Batman was a hit.
You had the Batman stuff, and then there was no more Superman coming out, and it was these films. So I'm sure that at 21 I was so eager to see this, because I just was, wow, it's an adaptation of a long time character. So
and like you said, Chris, Alec Baldwin was in so much. I loved him in Hunt for Red October.
Well, we got to remember.
Long.
I'm sorry, Shane, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's fine. Not long before that.
Baldwin had just. So this is a point in his career where he just did Hunt for Red October. Then he did one of the all-time great blistering cameos in the history of film in Glengarry Glen Ross in 1992. If you haven't seen that movie, that is mandatory viewing for every American.
Always be closing.
Exactly. And so he was really at the top of his game. I'm curious to know what his thought process was in taking this role. I thought he was excellent for what he was given, but it's just interesting to think like why actors choose roles that are really departures.
I think it was
Keaton.
going to. It was really something that could have turned into multi-movies in his mind.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Well, I know he was on Stern. I haven't listened to Stern in years, but at one point, and that just quick came up about the movie, and he said that he hated the experience of doing The Shadow. Because I remember Jamie D and I were talking about that, because he goes, "Did you listen to Baldwin today?" I said, "Yeah," and it brought up about the Shadow. So I was kind of deflated to know that he really didn't like the experience of playing the character.
Mm.
Part of me wonders if that's hindsight or whether he did actually not enjoy it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I've heard tons of actors over the years go back and try to poo-poo projects that may not have done nearly as well back in the day that they wanted it to. And you go back in other interviews and you hear, "Oh yeah, no, I had a wonderful time," and then later on, like not so. Who knows? Yeah.
The shooting apparently had its problems, because I'm looking at this image you have on screen here, Ian, of the Hall of Mirrors scene in the Monolith Hotel.
Yep.
Apparently there was an earthquake while they were shooting the movie, and the mirrors got ruined, and it set production back a week.
Oh my God. Wow. Jeez. It happened. Well, if the movie came out in 94, this was probably after the 89 earthquake. So I'm assuming it must have been a different one. Because that one was catastrophic. I still remember watching the World Series when the feed went out from that catastrophic earthquake in California. So yeah, but then again, shock. It's just in. Earthquakes happen in California.
So waiting for it to break off.
You're not. Yeah.
I know one of the things that I don't think I made the connection at the time, but I remember after one of the viewings of seeing the movie. So it's not prior to this, it's never been established before this movie that his agents had a ring, and that's how they would communicate.
Okay.
But in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, in Mark Spector Moon Knight, he got the armor, he got a place in the city itself to operate out of. And I believe it was called the Shadow Cabinet.
It was.
But he basically had people with different expertise, and they would have a ring, which looked very similar to the opal. And that's how they would project their holograms to the table that Mark had set up to speak with her. And it was one of these where they can't see other people there, but they can converse and stuff like that. So one of the viewings that I had after this, I was like, did they steal that idea for this movie from Moon Knight? Because that's what jumped out at me at the time.
Yeah,
It's a possibility.
I love his sanctuary. I would have liked it more if it was underneath the house, because it seems like it'd be easier to get to. But I really enjoyed his hideout.
Yeah, the entranceway was probably the most silly part of the whole thing. Was that the fact that nobody's like, no drunk guy has accidentally like leaned on that and intentionally opened up the door in all this time. You know, it is New York. Like people are all over the place, and that was not any different in the 1930s.
So a question I have, Matt, because you have far more expertise in this area, is that there's the Ken Allard identity, and there's the Lamont Cranston identity. Isn't his real name Ken Allard?
Yeah. So the way before Howard Shankin, the origin was more, he was a World War II or World War I mercenary who disappeared. He was a pilot who disappeared, and then he reemerged years later. And there was a gentleman called Lamont Cranston that lived in New York. And basically, Kent approached him and said, I'm taking your identity. And so Lamont just basically never comes back to New York City.
Okay.
And that's how he got that identity of Lamont Cranston, which, by the way, always is why I say Moon Knight is just the Shadow, because he's Mark Spector. He just creates the identity of Stephen Grant to be in the elite of society. Then he also has a street level character, and to say the streets, and the Shadow has some other identities that he assumes to gather information. But so that's how it is, the original lore. One of the things I like that Howard Shankin injected and that they kind of used here is he also was this warlord, and the reason why he knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men is because he has his own.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things from this movie that I thought was pretty cool. Once I started to learn more of the lore of the actual character, that was something I still latched on. I was like, I wish that would be part of the history, because I think that idea is pretty cool. Other people's evil, because you're probably have darker evil than they do.
I think it's one of the strongest parts of the film, in that they're demonstrating, especially when they had the flashback of him and his men, pillaging that village. He's got blood all over his face and the saber and all that. Because the Chaykin story, which, by the way, anybody who wants to read one of the great shadow adaptations of comics, you got to get the Chaykin miniseries. What's it called again?
I think it's Blood and Judgment.
Yes, Blood and Judgment. That's excellent. And that's where they establish that he's just Lamont Cranston, right? They don't go into the whole Ken Allard thing, correct?
They basically just kept with Lamont in that. I think they just streamlined. Now, if you read the novelization, I remember reading the novelization for this book, or for this movie, and there is a thing in there about him being Ken Allard, posing as Lamont Cranston. I remember reading that line over and over, like, what the heck does this even mean? And it wasn't until years later, when I knew that the Shadow is Ken Allard, that I was like, oh, that's what they were referencing in that book.
Oh, Ian is just Blood and Judgment right on the screen.
Yeah, still available, by the way, still in print.
Oh yeah, I got the trade. It's excellent. So
I never read that.
Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, the only issue I quasi take. So I guess that's that back a little bit. I like the idea. The only issue I kind of take with this is they brought him into modern times, and I tend to enjoy more of the Shadow stories when they're set in the 30s or 40s.
Yeah,
because I want him to be the way that men acted, just like James Bond. I want them to be that stereotypical chauvinistic guy, bad guy, rogue that they were in that time frame, because today you can't be that way. But not excusing the behavior, but at that time it was seen as more acceptable. So when I read the character, it's like this is what I wanted to see in this. So the only thing I kind of took umbrage with that story is they brought him into modern times, but he hasn't changed.
Right.
The way he acts.
Which is one of the things. Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say is one of the things that works the best about this movie to me is the fact that it's set, in the 1930s and using the noir, pastiche that they're certainly, I wouldn't quite say jamming down our throats, but that they're using very much that's the style they're aiming for. Like, I mean, looking at this, this image right here is a perfect example of that.
It's Margot Lane.
Exactly. It's 100% like, I'm going for a movie serial vibe to this. I'm going for like those early noir detective stories as much as possible. The lighting, the style, the dress.
Yeah, just dripping with Art Deco.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. If you had set this in 1994, that would have been a lot harder to set up unless you were going for a timeless Batman the Animated Series style, where although that's
the Grey Ghost.
Yeah, exactly. Although that's quote unquote happening now, it's also not, because there's blimps in the sky and nobody has modern technology. So
yeah,
I was going to say and listeners are interested, to go back to Matt's point about the time period. Garth Ennis did a mini series. I think it's called Fire of Creation or something like that, where it's the Shadow in the 30s, and he's involved with intrigue with the Japanese in the lead up to World War II. It's really good. And then
that is indeed Fires of Creation.
Fires of Creation.
Okay.
And then Matt Wagner did some fabulous Shadow stuff. He did The Death of Margot Lane. He did Shadow Year One, which is awesome. I'm sure Matt's read these. And he did The Shadow versus Grendel. They're all excellent. Excellent.
I'll tell you, I thought they were good up until the last mini that I read by Dynamite, where again they brought him into kind of modern times. And there was a bunch of things I didn't like about that storyline, but they essentially kind of like implied that he's dead now and that somebody else is going to be taking up the mantle. So I was just kind of like, those are the stories I want to read, and I don't know what happened after that. So just like I think I'm done here.
What did we think of the portrayal of the villain by John Lone in this film?
Cheesy.
Well, yeah, I think he chewed just the right amount of scenery. It's an entertaining performance, at least.
Yeah, I thought it was. I mean, he's a pulp villain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right from, I enjoyed the kind of to Ian's point, like when they're having the confrontation, they're talking about, oh, where'd you get that tie, Brooks Brothers, and like like
that's one of my favorite interactions.
Yeah, it's so they're trying to balance like sort of pulpy goofiness with something like something a little more gravitas to it, and I think Ian's right. They didn't always find it, but it was still really enjoyable to watch. And John Lone is actually a great actor. Yeah. But I thought though the final confrontation, that left me. I thought that was underwhelming.
I agree.
The bombs rolling down the stairs and like Ian McKellen like falling off the banister, and the mirror thing is kind of like a riff on Enter the Dragon, which is one of my favorite movies. But Siobhan Khan was just kind of like disposed of, and like that was it. Like he's like, all right. I like how they put him in the mental institution because he took out his frontal lobe, which was great. And by the way, does the Shadow not kill people? I thought he did.
He wields twin Colts.
Yeah.
Yes, he kills people.
Yes.
But he didn't kill people in this movie, did he? Or did he?
Not
it's a PG movie.
Well, he clouded Tim Curry's mind and got him to jump through a window like 2 stories down.
They took a dive off of the skyscraper.
Yep.
And he said, "Next time I'm on top."
Yeah,
that's
right. Yep.
I did. Well, I was going to say, one of the things I thought was amazing was how they showed. So in the books and I think in the radio, it was always blurred if he had any type of abilities, and it was always that he was really just, I think, a couple feet to the left or to the right of where you think he's supposed to be, and that's how he disappears. I like in this movie that he was able to cloud people's minds first to give himself like an ugly face, to hide his, but also that he actually blended in. You didn't see him at all, but if like in the one scene where they shined a flashlight on him, he got trapped and he couldn't go anywhere except come out
Right.
to be is it corporealized? I don't know, but he came out of almost like the wall. I thought that effect was very cool.
I thought all the effects with him vanishing or like he'd appear for a minute to punch someone, like I thought all that was really well done for 1994. Like I thought,
and
I
agree with you. In the theater, I can remember, but even more so because I'm listening to it with headphones on. Sometimes you hear his voice all around you in the stereo headphones or in the theater. It's going around the surround sound, which makes it all the more
eerie.
Yeah, good word. Thank you. Eerie about him just floating around. You never know where he is, and oh my God, and then boom, he gets you. That's it. Good heavens.
Most of the special effects in this movie really do hold up because they really are for the most part practical.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'd say the dagger is the silliest out of every.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was goofy. It's very goofy.
Especially when it bends in half.
Out of it.
Oh yeah. but also I really like just how simple the costume is. You know, utilizing the scarf the way they do, the red pops the way that it's supposed to pop, and it does feel like you would not know who's behind the scarf, even though it's just a freaking scarf. And I appreciate that. And
Matt's got he's got the figure.
Got the
there
bust.
we go.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can make it out here. Maybe if I turn on this light.
Oh yeah.
So I finally was able to locate this statue. But the reason why I got so cheap and I could find it is because the brim was broken off. And Kevin set me up with somebody who could put it back together. And then I could do any type of custom work. He said, you can any type of custom work that you want. So the statue is actually completely black. But I sent him a copy of the original scarf that I wore when I went to Shane's party as the Shadow.
Yeah.
And he used that to paint just the scarf, that color red.
Wow.
So, but you're right. I do like that. That's one of the reasons why I love that costume is it's so simple and it's really just the streak of red. Yep.
Yeah.
Similar to that.
Yeah.
And usually I find myself, like there was a couple runs that I did where I was basically wearing like a black outfit, but then I had a red bandana that I was wearing. Just because I like that kind of that coloration combo.
I've gone deep diving in the still existent Comic Geek Speak Flickr a couple times and seen some of those old Halloween parties that you guys had, and that shadow costume was magical.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
that is my Blue Beetle costume that Shane has. Where anytime I need to quick throw something together, I just
that's my
grab that
Starman.
That's
the Starman. I pulled the Starman out. Yeah, not the Blue Beetle one. I pulled the Starman out.
Did you guys find? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the one line in the movie that made me smack my head was the atomic bomb line, where like some sort of atomic bomb. Oh, that's a good name.
That's catchy.
Yeah.
Oh, that was our first hint, though, that this is pre-World War II.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you guys? I found, and this is no fault of the movie, but I just found Ian McKellen being in the movie very jarring. Just because I'm so accustomed to him as being like this tremendous like Shakespearean actor and all these great roles, and it's like a weird role because he's like this nutty, forgetful professor, and he's very kind of like supposed to kind of sedate and kind of like monotone throughout the movie.
Well, it's funny too that Tim Curry took this role supposedly because he had always wanted to work with Ian McKellen, and it's not the best Ian McKellen experience.
Yes. I just don't think he was given that much to do. I mean, he's hypnotized for part of it, and it's just knowing like this is a guy who's done King Lear, like knowing his skills. It's just I mean, I don't know. Maybe they gave him a hell of a lot of money for it. I have no idea, but it's just odd.
Yeah, I agree. It's completely odd.
He was in the movie, so you could hear somebody in the background go, Renard Lane. Reinhardt. There we go.
Reinhardt.
It was
Reinhardt Lane.
I think going back to the ending, I think one of the things that would have helped it is if he, just like in the novelization, if he would have been the Shadow as opposed to Lamont. I do kind of like the fact that it wasn't so much fisticuffs, as much as it was a show of whose abilities were stronger. So there's aspects of the third act that I really liked, because at the end of the line, that was the one thing that Kent had to overcome to win, especially when you find out that Shiwan Khan blocked a whole hotel. From
I thought that was
city.
cool.
So, so I do like that aspect, but it should have been the Shadow. And I was watching the trailer before we started, and one of the scenes that it just quick flipped through in the movie, it's Lamont sitting there talking to Burbank, but in the quick glimpse of the trailer, he's in the Shadow costume, and it's like it seems like there should have been more of that going on. And the other thing that came to mind is you said about I keep waiting for someone to make a really good, especially with the comic book atmosphere now for movies, a really good Shadow movie. And last I heard, Sam Raimi has the rights, and he initially tried to get them in the 90s, and when he failed, that's when he made Darkman.
Right.
So there's
I read
times
that too,
now, if I watch the Shadow trailer and the Darkman trailer and try to imagine what it would be like if they were merged, if Sam Raimi would have done that movie, what it would have been like. Now, I
would
can't
love to see Raimi do
guarantee-
the Shadow. Oh, man, that'd be
I
great.
can't guarantee it wouldn't have some of those aspects that are Sam Raimi-ish that might have turned me off from the character, even though I liked Sam Raimi's style. But and I can't remember if I said this to you, Shane. I'm pretty sure I had said it to Kevin. For the longest time, I thought they should have gotten Alexis Denzov from he's
Buffy
married to
and
Alyssa
Angel.
Hannigan from Angel to play the Shadow. Because I think just like with James Bond, you need someone in their late 30s, 40s to play this, because it had to be. This character has to be someone that's lived life. It can't be someone like a Batman Begins that's just they're just
can't be 20 years old.
Right. And the season, what was it, season 4 or 5, where he kind of, well, Willow said the Marlboro Man type of thing, but he would carry the twin guns and just the low voice that he would use.
Oh, he became a badass in Angel.
And that's what I thought. He could play that character. Now, I think he's past his prime now, but that's the type. Even Adrian Brody, because he's got the schnoz for it. But I thought after watching Predators, I think it was Predators that he did in 2010. And seeing how much of a badass he was in there, I was like, oh my God, he could
he's an Oscar-winning actor. He can do anything.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's been talk of late. The Sam Raimi project was back in like 2007. It was being talked about. So it's more than likely dead on the vine unless he still actually has any sort of connection to it. But there were rumblings back in like 2020 and 2022 that there may potentially be some sort of Shadow project coming. There was even discussion at one point of possibly Chris Evans being cast. That I don't know about that. That seems like that wouldn't make any sense to me. I love Chris Evans, but I'd actually rather see Chris Pine than Chris Evans personally. I think Chris Pine.
I think Pine would be a great Shadow.
Yeah, I could see that more.
Yep. But or just somebody new, somebody that we don't even really know, that would work just as well for me.
The way I'm envisioning a Shadow project, I mean, Chris mentioned streaming platforms a little bit ago. I think if we do get a Shadow project, it might turn out to be a series. And I'm envisioning something that harkens back to the old detective story hour radio shows where the Shadow was more narrator than character. And I think we'd see more of his network of operatives, and they'd be a very diverse bunch. And it'd be stories about them, and maybe sometimes stories about the criminals he's tracking down. And the Shadow would kind of operate on the periphery of things. We wouldn't even see him that much until, and we wouldn't see him without his mask at all, probably until the end of the first season.
Yeah.
So they could cast almost anybody. It would be kind of like Pedro Pascal, taking off his helmet
as the Mando
twice in the first season.
Yep.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't remember the gentleman's name. I know he was working on Scooby Doo in the early days of CGS.
Scott Neely.
Scott Neely.
Right. I met him at Baltimore Con once. You told me to go up to him and say, "The sun is shining," and he just looked at me over a sandwich and he was like, "Hi."
I remember him and I.
How are you?
We're talking about the movie, and he had a good suggestion. I was like, "Yeah, I can see it." Is rather than do something like Shiwan Khan, they should do something more like street level, where he goes up against gangs.
Oh yeah,
and maybe that's how you establish. If you did a TV streaming series, that's how you establish it. Sure. Don't worry about trying to do a big bad, but just have him take on specific mobs.
Even if it was a big bad, it could be a kingpin of New York for all that matters, with all of his factions going through.
We have to remember that with today's sensibilities, they're not going to do Shiwan Khan, because they're going to equate him too much like a Fu Manchu type character. They're going to do something else.
Let's also focus on the fact that in this day and age, you could very easily wind up doing an audio drama. You could wind up doing a full podcast. Harken back to the radio serials of old. Yeah, go back to the roots. Have that be what comes out. I'm frankly surprised it hasn't happened yet. Because like there's a Batman audio drama out right now. There was a Wolverine
really good
one. There's a Harley Quinn one. Like so many companies seem to be going back to the well of the audio drama now. That Dynamite, I feel like it's a missed opportunity to not do that with something that started off as with its radio roots like this. So
even though I love the character, I just don't think he has. Probably at the time this movie came out, you were getting the tail end of people who were familiar with the character, and now the younger generation just has no idea who he is. Just like the Green Hornet or the Lone Ranger, even though they've all had movies, the Phantom. At least here in the U.S., I know the Phantom's big elsewhere.
Right.
So I would love that, but I don't know if they're looking at it as would people immediately latch onto it.
But there again, if they do it well, word of mouth would spread and people would go see it. Look at how many flocked to the Avengers movie that never saw it or read
there's
anything.
a Guardians of the Galaxy franchise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As long as it's not Alec Baldwin in a costume on a Zoom call, then I think that that Dick Tracy thing is still so weird.
It's very weird.
I have yet to see that Dick Tracy.
Yeah, I didn't watch that yet either.
Oh, freaky man.
The movie?
No. His most recent antic to keep the
Warren
rights.
Beatty, who claims to have, he has the Dick Tracy movie rights, and he did something in character, like an interview thing with like people from TCM, was it?
Yeah, something. One of the cable networks.
As Dick Tracy, just as like a pseudo documentary kind of thing.
Yeah,
every 10 years does one now.
He would have been better off doing it as Bulworth than Dick Tracy.
Matt, I wanted to ask,
just in the last 6 months or something.
Yeah.
Matt, I wanted to ask you one of the aspects of the film that we already touched on that I really liked was them establishing his very sordid and dark past. Now, is that in the original pulp material that he was essentially a criminal in Asia, or is that kind of more modern insert?
Well, I've only read one of the novels, the first one, and listened to a bunch of the radio dramas. Kind of seem to gloss over some more of that.
Do.
I mean, we did get Margot from that.
Yeah.
But I think I remember reading Denny O'Neill's run that he did with DC in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he did kind of do more implication. I think it was the Dark Eagle was one of the names that when they pulled back his scarf, he has like a horrendous face that the face that we see as Lamont Cranston isn't really his face. I think that's something that kind of came over the years, that they hinted that he had some type of dark past, but not to the extent as like this movie kind of put it in there, or Howard Shankin did. Just that, as far as I know, he was just kind of a mercenary, and maybe in the times of the 30s, a mercenary was seen as this horrific person, like a warlord that we would see now as, a monster.
Well, he was like an opium warlord in this film.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
But I also really enjoyed
the first song is Poppy Fields.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed. They gave Margot. They had this connection, and she has like this telepathic. Ability.
She has this ability herself,
and he couldn't
mind tricks of the entire movie. I like there is no shadow. There is no shadow,
and he couldn't control her because of that.
I mean, I'm not really a fan of that in like the lore, but I did like some of the lines where they would be having a conversation, and she would like answer questions before you could even say them because she could. So that I kind of thought was novel. I did like the where he had a dream and they were sharing dreams, and he's like, I dreamt that I ripped off my face and I was somebody else underneath. He's like, you have problems. He goes, I'm aware of it. And there are some times where, like, if Meg says she had a dream, I am tempted to say I had a dream that I ripped off my face and I was somebody else. Just to see what you would say.
It's also funny you mentioned Bullworth, because that now, like, talking about the ripping off the face, like that's also funny enough, the element that is mentioned in this, the beryllium sphere. Let's go back to another retro movie review, shall we? Because Galaxy Quest.
That's right.
Another reference there to another thing that we've covered on this very podcast here. So everything's connected to the Shadow.
Well, he is the progenitor of much of the comics we enjoy today in some form or another.
Yep. Looking at some of the trivia on the IMDb here, the scene on the bridge at the beginning could be basically partially based on the Living Shadow, the very first novel, as the Shadow saves a man from suicide on the Brooklyn Bridge. So this is
Harry Benson.
Yeah, very different situation, but hearkening back to that in some ways. Also, funny enough, Peter Boyle played a taxi driver in Taxi Driver, and now he's a taxi driver here.
Yes, and his cab was a Sunshine cab.
Yes, it was.
For fans of the sitcom Taxi.
Yep. Also, the smoking sign in this, based on an actual smoking sign in New York City for years, with the smoking Joe Camel sign that was in Times Square for many, many years. That's what the not quite Joe Camel
was a llama.
Yeah,
that's right. The llama.
I'd climb a mountain for a llama.
But it was also bathed in green at times, and the green llama having its reference as well to
well done, Ian. Well done.
Other pulps. Yep. Was there ever a Doc Savage movie? No, right? I mean, at least not.
Wasn't Doc Savage on
maybe
television?
like a serial.
Okay. All right.
I think for some reason I think Peter sent this to me. There was talks. I think The Rock, or Dwayne Johnson, was signed to play the role, and there was an article about it. And in that article, they actually referenced my episode of With or Without Pulp talking about Doc Savage.
That's funny.
But I think that's kind of gone by the wayside, and especially since his Black Adam run, I kind of think he's moving away from the comic book genre.
But wasn't there a 70s Doc Savage television movie? I feel like there was.
There was, because yep, Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze, 1975.
Okay. I thought so.
On Eli.
Because Marvel briefly had the license to do in appropriately the Bronze Age. They did comics of Doc Savage.
And
because there was
for a while too.
There was a storyline where the Shadow and Doc Savage, they had a crossover, because after the Schenken run ended, then they picked up a series set it in the period piece back in the 30s, and they also shortly thereafter started Doc Savage. And
that was the Shadow Strikes comic, wasn't it? Was it the Shadow Strikes? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And at the end of that, they actually hint that maybe one of his origins is what was given in the Howard Schenken established run, that he learned everything from. I forget the name of the place that he went to where he learned his abilities and stuff like that, and he stayed forever young. But
not Shangri-La, is it?
It might have been. Is that where they said it was? Ah, damn! Now I gotta look that up.
The movie mentions a legendary place called Shang-Chi.
Okay. And there were Shadow Batman crossovers as well, right? At one point.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Again, that was one of the things in the 70s. I think there was 2 episodes, and they kind of just or not episodes, issues.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
think
the Shadow
they
did
kind
appear in Batman comics in the 70s. Yes.
Yeah, I think there was like a hats off. I respect your work. Why I respect your work, type of thing. Again, Denny O'Neil worked on those.
Kind of similar to the gray ghost stuff in the animated series.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
I believe there was 2 serials, or at least one serial that was done in the 40s or 50s. And I think the way that they did the Shadow then is they basically just had him wear like a black mask as opposed to any scarf.
Okay.
I guess that was too advanced one.
At the, I mean, going back to the earthquake that Murd mentioned earlier on, with the troubles and what have you, that last scene was supposed to be much longer initially, and then the earthquake wound up having to truncate things. So that is probably why we didn't get more shadow in the last scene. Is that was probably meant to be later on in whatever they were going to film, but glass shatters this just in, so it wasn't going to happen.
Now, Ian, thinking about the possibilities of a sequel at that time, I'm assuming the movie didn't do well enough to garner a sequel. Is that?
I don't think so.
I don't
think it only made $48 million worldwide on a $40 million budget.
Yikes. Okay.
That's not enough.
So the bean counters, that's not going to justify a sequel.
Yeah.
Oh, no, definitely not. Yeah, 48 million on a 40 million. So there was only an $8 million profit, and even in 1994 money, that's not enough to get a sequel. Definitely not.
No.
I mean, as much as I like Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, I don't think that did enough to warrant the sequel either. So I can't imagine this movie did.
Dungeons and Dragons, you'd be surprised. you'd be surprised. I was thoroughly impressed by that movie and what it did. It's doing better, pretty well overseas as well. But it's made, let's see, 179 on a 150 budget. So you might unfortunately be right about it not having a sequel. But you never know. You never know this day and age. Especially
with Hasbro owning it now.
Good point.
Kind of pushing.
Speaking of that, Shane, were there toys for this movie?
Oh yeah, there were.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that.
Yep.
Okay.
I can't remember if Toy Biz made them or somebody. It wasn't. Was it Kenner? I'm gonna have to look that up. That I don't remember.
Did you buy any of them at the time?
No. Nope. They looked a little
Shane didn't buy the
goofy.
toys. Woof.
The only one I got at the time was the one that the top was off the hat of the Shadow. So when light came through it, it would light up his red eyes. But I tell you what, I just got this. I think they did some type of special release Phantom figure. So I finally got a cool Phantom figure, and I'm looking at that, and I have the Rocketeer, and the one, even though I don't know how people feel about the Lone Ranger movie that Disney did, a decade and a half ago. They had some cool figures. I look at those and I think, why can't I get a nice, cool Shadow figure at this point?
Yeah.
But again, I don't think anyone's. I can't even get a Funko Pop of the Phantom. I'm starting to collect all these pulp era ones like Zorro and Rocketeer. And I can't get a freaking Shadow, and he's my favorite.
Yeah.
But you guys make a valid point before that. I remember when maybe 10 years ago or so in my region of New Jersey, there was a guy doing pulp conventions, like a small pulp convention, like a motel, like a typical small comic show. And like people were selling pulp from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, which was really cool. But as people die off, how many people today are into that or even aware of some of these characters?
And like it was Kenner.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Wow, they did quite a few figures.
Yeah, they did. They did a lot more than I thought, honestly, including transforming Lamont Cranston. The transforming figures are my favorite because they just have 2 heads and one of them goes into their chest.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember the Power Rangers had those back in the day too. Like you could have Billy with just his regular head, or then you open up the chest and you flip it out, and then suddenly he's transformed into the Power Ranger.
Yeah, and meanwhile the chest is like twice as big as a normal body would be for the figure.
Exactly.
Look at this, Shane. This is a fairly extensive line for a movie that didn't perform very well.
Agreed.
Well, back at this time, every movie that came out had a toy line.
Yeah.
Even Arnold Schwarzenegger's last action hero had a clear line.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. Wow.
That makes sense. You know what? It was based on a freaking toy. You know, so like that at least made a little bit of sense. But yes, the movie did not do so great.
Looking at the figures, what I found really entertaining in the movie was Khan's Mongol warriors who look great. They have them in the armor. They're running around the city. Nobody's paying them any attention at all. Like nobody's like, wait, who is this? Like there are people just walking around. And this guy's like walking through the city. By the way, one scene that I thought was really well done and perfectly captured the atmosphere of that type of story. When he's pursuing the Mongol warrior into the Chinatown and the firecrackers are going off and the lighting, it looked really cool and really atmospheric. It was really well done. I'm giving Russell McKay, he has some chops.
Yep. Look at this Shiwan Khan that I found on eBay here. That somebody's
He's got really big hands.
He really, really does. Yeah. Kind of makes
what's it going for, Ian? What's that going for on eBay?
Oh, I guarantee you $8. Oh, $17.99. $17.99. How about that? There you go. I'm a little bit, I mean, I guess I'm not that surprised, but looking at these figures and how much they just harken back to like an animated series, I'm surprised they didn't try to make one. I mean, maybe it was in the cards at one point, and then when the movie tanked, they said no thank you to it. But
you're right. They do have an animated feel to them, don't they?
Yeah, it would have been pretty cool to see an animated take on the Shadow.
Sure.
Shane, I'm surprised you don't have. You don't have even one figure.
No,
from this line. Wow.
I didn't think they looked that good, so I didn't bother. I mean, you have to think that's in the mid '90s, so it's kind of like it's past my nostalgia for Kenner Star Wars, Hasbro G.I. Joe. And it's in a time period where they're goofy with gimmicks and springs and not my thing.
Did you get any of the Batman '89 movie figures?
I did have the original 3. I had Batman, Bob the Goon, and the Joker. I don't have any of them anymore. I wouldn't mind getting a hold of a Batman again someday, but
I actually still have mine. But I think it's interesting how all of a sudden you're trying to dismiss your addiction by like, well, they were kind of goofy, so I didn't get them. It was the '90s.
That was the time. You know, that was after Star Wars figures died away. I got
out of G.I. Joe. I didn't have time
because they got goofy. I was 22, 23 years old. I was kind of out of that phase. I still read comics, but I really didn't get any toys until a few years after that.
What's great about the social right now, if you're online, you can see behind Shane and what his cave now is.
Well,
he's fully re-immersed himself.
And all of these, that this is all more recent stuff in the last 15, 20 years. Yep. None of it's from back in the 90s.
A return to our boyhoods, my friend.
Yeah.
Let me point out something fun real quick, gents, while I still have it up here. Philip Jose Farmer's book, Tarzan Alive, and Doc Savage, His Apocalyptic Life, hint that the Shadow's girlfriend, Margot Lane, is the sister of Lois. Margot Lane debuted on the radio in 1937. Lois debuted in 1938. And then I say, just for shits and giggles, funny enough, Margot Kidder played Lois Lane in the films, but who cares? But that's a nice little,
You never know. I mean, the Shadow had an enormous pop culture presence at this time. I mean, maybe Siegel and Schuster like, oh, we can use that name.
Certainly possible.
You never know.
Only the Shadow knows. Only the Shadow knows.
See, fantastic.
Well, what's Doc Savage's first name?
I don't know, actually.
Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh, really?
What is
Clark?
it?
Yep.
Clark. Oh, okay.
Clark.
Okay.
And who's the Shadow? Kent Allard. I'm just saying.
It's possible.
Clark Kent.
Ian, go ahead, Shane. I'm sorry.
There was that 3-part comic book history documentary that PBS had, I think, back in the early 2000s.
Did Liev Schreiber narrate that one?
Yes. And at some point they're talking about these pulp heroes and the DC Comics guys, and one creator's like, well, what you didn't create, you just kind of stole or adapted.
Of course.
In a different way.
Well, to go back to Ian's point, I think it's very, very well put, is that, and I do remember thinking this at the time in '94, is that you're right. But the Batman '89 had such a massive impact.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of people didn't realize, unless they're really into the material, is that all these pulp characters you mentioned, the Phantom, the Rocketeer movie, which is wonderful, this film, they're all trying to kind of glom onto that, but they also have their own very distinct and strong histories themselves
Sure.
that most people just weren't aware of. So, you kind of have like this hybrid thing that worked. I mean, more effectively in some films. Like I think The Rocketeer is pretty much
Oh, perfect.
on
Yes.
mark the whole movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
But granted, that's a more recent comic creation, but it harkens back to those pulp origins. But
Yeah.
I got to say again, gentlemen, Shane, I'm so glad we went with this selection because you
Yeah.
talked about this movie lovingly for so many years, and I was like, you know what? I was a schmuck when I was 21. I bet this is better than
A
I
lot
thought
of us
it
were,
was.
Chris.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is. It's really fun.
Well,
So,
just to go off of what you were saying about with the impact that Batman '89 had, if I recall correctly, when they were doing the Phantom, which
Yeah.
I actually would put above this movie, but
I do too. I enjoy the Shadow, but I think the Phantom is a better
Yeah.
story and just overall more well done.
there's still a couple issues I have with that, but fewer than I have. But anyway, I believe Billy Zane said they were going to do the fake muscles like the Batsuit had, and he decided that instead he was going to get in shape, and that's why it's basically like a spandex that he wore
Yeah.
as the suit. So you're right. The plans were to kind of continue to pull from the '89 Batman, just like this movie did to some extent. And then to use it elsewhere. But you had said before, Ian, that this was kind of like a '66 and an '89 Batman.
Yep.
I could, if it wasn't for the fact that came after this, I could see this as very much Batman Forever
Okay.
Oh yeah.
type of feel
Yeah.
to it.
Very good point. Yeah.
I could see that.
That's a really, really good point. The other thing that I feel like Batman '89 did better than this, and I know I already mentioned like the matte paintings and all that, is that Batman for the most part was also filmed on a set.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I feel like Gotham City actually feels like a city that's more than 3 blocks
oh
long.
yeah, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and this movie very much feels like it was filmed on the same 3 blocks over and over again.
Yeah, but it looks good.
Well, I want to say Batman was in a larger studio in London
It
when
was.
it filmed.
Yeah.
Oh, it definitely was. Yeah, versus the
Was it
Universal.
the James Bond one? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
I think it was the James Bond lot that they
I
used.
think, I
Maybe.
think you might be right, actually. Yeah, I think so. But with this too, like there was one thing in particular, the Empire State Building scene, where you see the guy fall, and luckily you don't see too much, although you do see him literally hit his head on the side of the Empire State Building as he's falling. But the Empire State Building really feels like it's directly next to Houston Street. And I know I'm the New York guy here, so I'm the one who's gonna notice the bullshit that nobody else cares about but me. But it kind of that at least threw me out of it ever so slightly with they're just using the same 3 blocks over and over again, because that looks like the exact same street that they were on earlier, same theater, same everything, and it's not an immersive city experience.
Well, and I also think when you're comparing the set of the Shadow to the set of the '89 Batman, it's a little bit easier in my mind to build Gotham from the ground up because you're not trying to model it after anything. Whereas this, they were really trying to pull in a reign of 1930s New York, in some capacity. So I doubt that they had the same kind of budget for the matte paintings that Batman did.
Yeah.
But again, just the design sensibility was completely different.
Even going to the budget, let me go back to the budget real quick for this movie.
40 million.
Yeah, 40 million. What was the budget for Batman '89? Batman '89.
Now it'll probably be like 20 million or something like that.
Oh,
ridiculous!
Yeah. I mean, I would get.
They had to pay Nicholson.
Yeah.
Actually, no.
Yeah, sweet deal.
The budget for Batman '89 was only $8 million more.
Let's see.
48 million. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's there's not that much of a difference there, budget wise. I mean, yeah, obviously, that might be one of the reasons why they filmed a lot of it in the UK was for budget reasons, because they were able to, maybe get things a little bit cheaper.
Maybe.
But it's just funny, design sensibilities and whatnot, that it's only like really like a $8 million difference, all things considered. So.
What do we think of Alec Baldwin overall in the film, like his performance?
Oh, I thought he did well. For the time period, he was one of the golden boys back then. I mean, he was in a lot of stuff, and some of it was quirky, like Beetlejuice, and then you had stuff like The Hunt for Red October, which I still think he did very well in. I liked him as Jack Ryan.
It was great.
You had him do this as the Shadow, kind of. If it would have succeeded, he probably could have done at least another one like Michael Keaton did for Batman.
For sure.
I think that was kind of the premise, was Batman was a hit. Now you could try to bring out the Phantom, the Shadow, Darkman, and all these other superhero kind of things without putting too much money in licensing for them, and just see what happens. But I thought his performance was very well done.
I think if he had been given more to do as the Shadow, I think that would have actually proven a lot for this. Because I liked what he had as the Shadow. I think he was creepy when he needed to be creepy. He seemed like he was a man of the shadows when he needed to be, and he encapsulated the character nicely. I just, well, if we had even more of it, that would have been great.
Even in the nightclub when he's talking to his uncle, who's Jonathan Winters, and his uncle says, I'm going to get a task force out for the Shadow. He kind of dips back in the shadow and
that's a great scene.
His mind. It still works very effectively.
And lighting effects, which was
it's cool,
great, and also 30s appropriate.
Yes,
it was very well done. And then he comes out of it, and the waiter brings over martinis. Like, ooh, thank you very much, playing that whole Playboy thing up a little bit, getting a drink for Margot Lane. I just thought it was very well done. It seemed like a very typical Bruce Wayne Batman dynamic, in the same way of Playboy versus hero.
Yeah, I thought he even tweaked his voice. Like, he didn't have the same voice when he was the two different characters. So I did appreciate that. I mean, it was clearly still his voice, and it didn't do. He's no Kevin Conroy with what he could do, what he was able to do with his voice. But at the same time, he didn't just do the same type of voice straight through, regardless of who he was. Yeah. So that I thought I wasn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say impressed, but I thought was appreciative.
Yes, he played a very good menacing Bruce Wayne. He was a good Lamont Cranston, but as Matt has pointed out, that's not quite the same thing as being the Shadow.
Right.
But while we're on the subject, though, does anybody know, was it always Baldwin in the Shadow costume? I mean, obviously there would be a stunt double at certain times, but like when the camera was zooming in on him in the Shadow suit with the scarf over his face, was that Baldwin in the costume, just with makeup and like a prosthetic nose and something, or was there occasionally like a body or face double?
I think it was. I don't know that, but part of me also wondered if his brother Steven didn't play the Shadow at some point as a body double. Because he was certainly thinner back then, if you're looking at like the Backdraft days. And he looks similar.
You're thinking about Billy Baldwin, not Steven.
Oh, did I say? Yeah, Billy Baldwin.
The youngest, I think.
Steven was Unusual Suspects. Yeah,
just looks a little bit different enough that it could work in the costume, maybe. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I just assumed it was.
They take the scarf off of his face, and he's like right there in the camera, and it's clearly not Alec Baldwin's usual face. And then his mind clouding dissipates, and it becomes Alec Baldwin's face. And my question is,
I think they just use a lot of makeup prosthetics to give him that.
Because his eyes look the same.
The Shadow has a distinctive schnoz, and Baldwin, I wouldn't say does. No. So I mean, it makes sense that you just put a lot of prosthetics on there to.
And that could have been another reason why there wasn't so much Shadow, was kind of, if I'm going to be in this, I'm not going to have a ton of makeup and masks on all the time.
That's why he didn't enjoy the experience.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
isn't that usually why, like in Spider-Man,
Tobey Maguire ripping off his mask?
In the third one, more without a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's the overall issue, or at least was the overall issue with these sort of movies, was when you cast a guy that everybody knows, everybody's going to want to see the guy that everybody knows, because hey, he's the attractive person. Let's have all the eyes on the attractive person, and get people to be recognized. Hey, Alec Baldwin's in this movie. Not, hey, some guy in a scarf is in this movie.
Yeah.
That's the overall give and take of the situation, which I feel like is not nearly as much today as it once was. But also, 3/4 of the superhero movies coming out now aren't wearing masks.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, isn't that the thing now
They
where
don't really
they want to
have
show the actor's face as much as possible, so they're always
Yeah.
taking their masks off. Yeah.
Yeah, just because recently as Quantumania, you notice that the actors were constantly snapping their Ant-Man or whatever helmets off. Like,
Yeah, off and
on and off and on
and
and on, and mostly off, just so that the actors' faces were visible as much as
Yeah.
possible.
exactly.
all that nanotech working overtime, that convenient nanotech on and off, on and off, on.
Even with the latest trailer for The Flash came out the day before we record this, and there's tons of maskless shots in that of
Yeah.
Michael Keaton, Batman, and the Flash. So that's just gonna happen in movies starring famous people. That's just in. All right.
I did like
anything else we wanted
the
to
ending.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I did like the ending line of this movie was how will you know where I am? Oh, I'll know.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought
That felt forced to me. I mean, it's like, how will you know where I am? It's just a lame excuse to get him to say, I know.
Well, I know. That doesn't mean I didn't think it was cool the way he delivered the line.
Right.
Only the shadow know where I know, we know.
I didn't realize doing backward that Orson Welles was one of the original voices of the Shadow.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Which, of course, makes
Yeah.
complete sense. I didn't realize that.
I have to say the old time radio, the Radio Classics channel on Sirius XM that I listen to a lot, used to play a ton of Shadow, and at some point in the last few years they were told not to. They couldn't anymore. Whatever rights surround those. So it's been a very long time since I've heard any Shadow on the radio anymore.
What entity has the rights to the Shadow?
I don't even know at the moment.
Would everything be with Dynamite, or would they be all over the place?
I don't know. That's a good point.
That is a good point.
It
Sure,
kind of
Dynamite
depends
has the
who
rights
owns
anymore.
it.
It's been a few years since Dynamite has put out anything featuring the Shadow.
That's true.
Is it? Were we 10 years off from when it's public domain?
Oh,
I don't know.
that's a good question.
That is a good question.
To some extent, shouldn't they? Whoever has the license try to use that up before it becomes public domain.
You would think.
What is the rule 100 years?
For some reason, I want to say it is 100 years.
It's pretty close to that. If it's not exactly 100, then it's about that.
Because I just saw somebody.
Steamboat Willie.
Steamboat Willie. Yep.
Said that I think in 2038 Batman becomes public domain, and their caption was, "I can't wait to beat this guy up when he's in public domain." Because they could do.
Well, Batman would be 2039, right? If it's 100 years, or is it not 100 years? I'm ignorant. I'm asking. I don't know.
Maybe maybe it was 101 year that the person did. I don't know how that works, but I mean, how old is Winnie the Pooh that they just did that?
Yeah, that they did that horror movie.
Well, and also
something become public domain.
I think also it's specific versions of the character that would enter the public domain, not necessarily the actual rights to the character.
Right. Yeah.
So
it wouldn't so much be like Batman in general. It would be Detective Comics number 27 Batman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think that's what they said about the horror movie based on Winnie the Pooh, is they couldn't do anything that was like they couldn't take something from Disney and incorporate that. It had to just be Winnie the Pooh. They could use the characters, but nothing that was previously kind of established that's not in public domain.
Exactly.
Okay, so just a quick search, and this may not be right. Typically, the public law duration of a copyright expires 50 to 100 years after the creator dies, depending on the jurisdiction.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if that's right or not.
Okay. Also, looking here at most recent comic books, I don't think anything's come out since 2017, which was the most recent Shadow and the Batman crossover, which was co-published between DC and Dynamite. There was a 6-issue miniseries, and then
who's the creative team on that, Ian?
let me look that up actually. But
I've never read that.
Yeah, that's the last one that came out back in 2017. Taking a look here.
I think they went up against Ra's al Ghul.
I believe they did. Steve Orlando and Giovanni Timpano.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Any other thoughts we wanted to bring up on the Shadow before we wrap things up?
No, just
What, you Ed Sullivan all of a sudden? What was that?
this really big shoe.
I don't know why. For some reason, the movie serial of it all, or the radio serial, wants me to go all the shadow. I have to say it that way, in that specific way, and I don't know why.
And you have to start laughing afterwards.
Oh, there was one other thing real quick. The exact line, "The weed of crime bears bitter fruit." That is directly from one of the radio show episodes of The Shadow, and that line is very much in the movie, and I think it was actually delivered quite well.
Oh yeah, it's a great line.
Yep. So happy to see that in there.
It's a fun movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad I saw it. It's not perfect in any way, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Definitely.
I feel like it was a 90s take on a comic book-ish movie set in the 30s.
Yes. That is a great way of putting it. How many freaking swears would we give it? Retrograde applies, obviously, but Shane, how many do you give it?
I'd give it a 4. I mean, I've watched it a few times every year since it's been out.
Okay. Murd?
3 1/4.
Okay. Matt?
I'll give it a 4 because I'm only going to focus on the stuff I thought was cool, and that's my favorite Paul character.
Fair enough. Chris?
Very strong 3.5.
I am sticking with Murd's graceful 3.25. that is what I'm going to give this one, definitely. But I'm super glad we picked it, and I look forward to whatever we land on next.
The next selection is Murd's.
Yes, it is actually. So yes.
In the future,
start thinking.
In the future, for someone, that should be a consideration for the Phantom, though, too.
Oh, no question about it.
Yep, yeah. Which I've never seen actually.
Oh,
I've never seen it either.
It's better than this one a little bit in storytelling.
I don't know when Adam has to do his announcement, but I would love it if you threw out there Barbarella.
I tried to watch that a few months ago. I couldn't get through it.
I think is it Sydney Sweeney? She wants to produce and star in a remake of that movie.
Okay,
somebody does. I know somebody is trying to remake it.
That sounds about right.
I know there's a comic out there right now of it too.
No, Dynamite has that license too.
Yeah,
nice.
This is what Adam is doing.
I've seen it.
I've seen it. I've seen it a couple times.
All right.
Okay.
I think that's about it. So, Matt, thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Yes, sir.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Matt.
You bet, brother.
Absolutely.
Catch you guys later.
Tell Meg we say hi.
Yes.
All right, we'll do.
Most definitely.
See you.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
All right. And before we transition into the best of 2022, I have something else that I would like to play real quick. If my darn phone would actually let me. Here we go.
Murd looks like he's in pain right now.
Yes,
no, that evil lurks in the hearts of men.
Oh, yes.
And my God, that mustache, that is sexy, man. That mustache is just, woof.
Yes, it's inhibiting my air harp abilities.
I know you're not a fan of him, Murd, but boy, is it becoming.
I feel like there's like a tiny rattan basket underneath my nose.
You're going to miss it because someday after you shave, you're going to go like this and go, something feels weird.
No,
I've been used to doing this instead.
Well, that's true. That's true.
These are me. This is not. It's simply the way it is.
I every now and then I look at photos of myself pre-beard and I'm like, who is this guy? I seriously, who is this 14-year-old? Come on. Well, it's time once again for Muddle the Murd. It's a short episode, so guess what? We throw in a Muddle the Murd before we get to the best of, and I will have Murd explain how you can submit your attempt to Muddle the Murd, which we need, by the way. We only have about 4 of these things banked after this, so get yourself some muddles in there. I'm going to yet again be posting it on the YouTube and on the Comic Geek Speak Supergroup. We want you to attempt to muddle the Murd. I think I'm pointing at somebody. Murd, go right ahead.
Okay, so when we talk about Muddle the Murd, we're talking about comics trivia, folks. And this is where you, the listeners, can participate by coming up with some comics trivia questions to ask of me, alias the Murd. So you need to come up with 3 questions, a Marvel Comics question, a DC question, and another question about some other publisher's comics. They also need to break down chronologically to 1 question about comics pre-1970, 1 question about comics between 1970 and 2000, and a 3rd question about comics post the year 2000. Don't forget to include the answers to these questions. Don't make them too granular or specific. Don't get into too much background detail, just something that's germane to plot or character. And also, please don't focus on extra textual elements such as advertisements, letter columns, like publishing the dimensions of the published format of the comic itself, unless that somehow relates to the story. So just kind of limit yourself in those ways. And then put all these questions and their answers into an email addressed to comicgeekspeak@gmail.com with Muddle the Murd in the subject line. Ian will find them. He'll put them in a special little folder. And then when the time comes, he will ask them of me, the Murd. I will attempt to answer them. And if I get all 3 of them wrong, you will, in fact, have muddled the Murd. And you will then have earned yourself a prize, which I will mail to you out of my own pocket.
Excellent. And what is our current prize, sir?
Okay, well, I went to the CGS studio to dredge up something that was a little more impressive than our last prize. I have to get out of my chair and go get it right now.
Oh.
There we go. Here we go. Go.
And now I'm back in my chair.
Yes.
And today's Muddle Hopeful will be playing for this copy of Comic Books Incorporated. How the Business of Comics Became the Business of Hollywood by Shauna Kidman. This is published by the U of California Press. Here's the blurb. Comic Books Incorporated tells the story of the U.S. comic book business, reframing the history of the medium through an industrial and transmedial lens. Comic books wielded their influence from the margins and in-between spaces of the entertainment business for half a century before moving to the center of mainstream film and television production. This extraordinary history begins at the medium's origin in the 1930s, when comics were a reviled, disorganized, and lowbrow mass medium, and surveys critical moments along the way. Market crashes, corporate takeovers, upheavals in distribution, and financial transformations. Shauna Kidman concludes this revisionist history in the early 2000s, long about X-Men and Spider-Man, when Hollywood had fully incorporated comic book properties and strategies into its business models and transformed the medium into the heavily exploited, exceedingly corporate, and yet highly esteemed niche art form we know so well today. So basically, it's the story of, from 30s to 2000s of how comics became fodder for film.
Very interesting. This book was published before the MCU then?
No, it's pretty recent.
Oh, is it? Okay.
The author just chose to cease her inquiry right around the time when things started getting heated.
Right.
Because I guess she figured everything that happened after the early 2000s was a book unto itself.
Sounds like something I'd enjoy reading.
This is from 2019, April 30th.
Oh, okay. Very recent.
I just checked the indicia a moment ago.
Yep.
So, this reader copy showed up in the studio, and it could be yours if you muddle the Murd.
Excellent. This attempt by Jason Keene. And he begins with greetings and salutations, gentlemen. We have heard your call for more questions, and this time it's a family affair. As my wife and child are joining me in an attempt to muddle the Murd.
All right.
All right.
Well, Keene family. Let's see what you got.
The gauntlet has been thrown down. All right.
Indeed. We begin with DC 1948. In Superman issue 53, The Origin of Superman, what type of reasoning does Superman's mother, Laura, give for not joining her son in his rocket as Krypton is about to explode?
Well, I'm glad somebody addressed this. I know later on the excuse given was that there was just a little prototype rocket ship and it wasn't big enough for an adult Kryptonian. Kind of reasoning would Laura have used in 1948? That she didn't want Jor-El to die alone.
That's actually pretty darn close, and I'm giving it to you. She proclaims with a tear falling from her eye that her place is on Krypton with her husband.
That's the answer. Murd. Boom.
Is pretty close. Okay. Yep. But I hope that I get another one
Good
right.
question.
Though,
Good question.
Yep.
Because the opposite case could be made too. I just want to make.
Fair enough. Well, I give it to you because again, that's pretty darn close. You might not have gotten the wording 100%, but you basically said exactly what it was, which is I want to stay here in the kitchen and wait for my husband. Move on to
You
Marvel.
suddenly made this a feminist critique.
Exactly.
In the Silver Age, Lara Lorvan was an astronaut, just so everyone knows. No, she was not. She was not barefoot and pregnant all the time.
I'm glad. Marvel 1991, Spectacular Spider-Man issue 173. Creatures. There you go. Creatures stirring. In what way does Peter Parker ruin the Daily Bugle's Christmas party?
Okay, now wait. You said 91, right?
1991, Spectacular Spider-Man 173.
Okay, yeah, I don't. I definitely don't have this issue. That was before I began collecting. So in what way does Peter Parker ruin the Daily Bugle Christmas party?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. All right. Well, the title is clearly a reference to A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clark Moore. Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. So I'm going to say... No, the question is Peter, not Spider-Man, but how does Peter ruin the Daily Bugle Christmas party? Well, Chris, do you have an idea about this? Are you prepared to supply the answer?
You said issue one. What was the issue number?
173.
173. Yep.
Was DeMatteis writing that by that point?
I would have to look it up.
Okay, because he has a great sense of humor in Spider-Man. I don't know, Murd. I'm sure I read it, but I just don't remember.
Well, if we were talking especially since it's DeMatteis. I'm just
that's a guess. I'm not sure about that, but
my answer is more of a Spider-Man ruins the party thing than a Peter ruins the party. But Spider-Man is battling vermin, and the battle spills over into the offices, and vermin lands in the eggnog.
The writer was Jerry Conway back then, actually.
That's right. DeMatteis is after him. All right,
with Sal Buscema on the artwork chores.
Yes.
So the correct answer was this fight with Nick Katzenberg. He lost his temper and slammed Nick through a table.
Wasn't Nick a slimy reporter?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
I don't think I know that supporting character.
Yeah.
So.
He was basically the Steve Lombard of...
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yep.
So, vermin of a sort, just not vermin by name. Yeah, but if DeMatteis were writing, that would have been a better guess, because I'm pretty sure DeMatteis created vermin.
Yes, he did.
All right, we got one more here. Image 2013, one of my favorites, Chew number 1. Taster's Choice. What is the only food that protagonist Tony Chu chooses to chew on? Because it's the only food that doesn't give off psychic sensations.
Oh, wow. Huh. Yeah. I have like the whole first year's worth of Chew issues, and I think I actually read the first one. What is the exception? What is a food that is bland enough that it doesn't... I'm just going to say tofu.
You came so close, because I was going to make this reference and hope that you get it. If you were to get it wrong, that is incorrect. But what would you say if I were to say Ayu killer tofu?
I would say, huh?
You don't know that Doug reference? Okay. The Beats.
Oh, okay. I do remember Doug Funny listening to a group called The Beats, now that you mention it. But yeah, I would never have gotten I couldn't name one of their songs. That's
Killer Tofu was their big one in the Doug universe. They're the Beatles type band that he listens to.
Oh yeah, sure. Vegetable themed, of course.
Indeed. Beats, delicious, nutritious beats is what the full answer is.
Good questions.
Excellent questions. And Jason says, hopefully we brought back a few good memories and gave you a run for your money. Regardless of the outcome, we wish to thank you all for the years of spectacular conversations, both those you record and those you create amongst your loyal listeners. Sincerely.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Jason. And I know this has not been Jason's first interaction with us. And I'm glad that he submitted these questions, and I'm glad he made it a family affair, because the family that muddles together schmuddles together. I don't know.
No. Yeah, it was right in front of you. The family that muddles together befuddles together.
Levenstein.
I'm blaming that on the mustache too.
Yeah.
It's taken away all your power.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, glad we got in a Muddle the Murd attempt. And again, please do send your submissions in because we are running low, and I will be putting the call out there in every single form of media that we can, including the Patreon for that matter, because let's get some more attempts in there, folks. Let's make the magic happen. Absolutely. And let's see, do I have my Oscars fanfare on theme? Here we are. Okay. Here we go.
Why do I feel the sudden urge to say the words, the magic of the movies?
Because clearly you can't wait for Fast X, and I'm just thinking of Vin Diesel, the movies, the magic, the popcorn. I like, and him and Nicole Kidman with their AMC bumpers they just made going to the movies that much more fun, you know? Because heartbreak feels good in a place like this. Nicole Kidman, heartbreak feels good. Well, here we are with the results that you, the listeners, helped happen for our Best of 2022 awards, which are totally happening in April, but that's fine. That's perfectly fine. It's around the time.
It is.
The MTV Movie Awards are coming up. We're not late.
Right. You're absolutely right.
We're way early for the Tonys.
Yeah.
100% the case. Yep. Yeah, no, this was a great crop of selections this time around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm absolutely happy that we got as many responses as we did for the actual, voting period. And Murd, I thank you very much for putting this together as always.
Every year, Murd.
It makes us happy.
It is, as always, an honor and a pleasure. And I give my personal thanks to everyone out there who participated in the voting process, too, because this does not happen without you, the listeners, raising your voices and letting us know what you loved most about comics in the previous year.
Hear, hear, indeed. All right, so who starts us off with our first selection?
Best new hero, that's me.
That would be you, Chris.
All
yes.
right.
Yes. Each one of us has 25. Well, I have all of the winners, of course. I've got all the information right here, but everybody else has 25% of the winners' information, and we're going to take turns opening the envelopes and reading the results to all of you eagerly anticipating listeners out there.
Let's get cracking.
And you can put a slight pause before actually saying the winner, because I did actually throw up some fanfare. So
I will bring all my panache to the performance. Levy poo.
Panache it up, Chris.
All right. Best new hero team debuting in 2022. The nominees are Boy Thunder, Lona Steel Rose? Yes, Lona Steel Rose.
Mm-hmm.
The Lost Children of DC's Golden Age, Sid Dallas from Public Domain, and Zan Ashgar, Ant-Man of the 26th Century. And the winner is...
boom.
The Lost Children of DC's Golden Age.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Thanks for going the extra mile with that sound effect, Ian.
By all means. By the time we're done with all the categories, I'll actually know how to fade out properly rather than just hit Fantastic.
Yeah, now this category was the closest race of them all this year. Yeah, truth to tell, actually the voting ended in a tie. But I decided a few years ago that ties were lame, and we weren't going to have them anymore. So I never actually submit a personal ballot to these things. The only time when I vote in the final voting for the Best of Awards is when it results in a tie. And then I basically play vice president in the U.S. Senate and vote to break the tie. It was actually a tie between Lana Steele Rose, who was the protagonist of the wrestling comic Do a Powerbomb by Daniel Warren Johnson, and the Lost Children of DC's Golden Age. So I cast my vote, and so I didn't read Do a Powerbomb. I don't know what quality character Lana Steele Rose really is, but not only do I know about the Lost Children of DC's Golden Age, I nominated them in the first place. So I'm responsible for this year's Jamie Award for Best New Hero Team going to the
Murd, that is your right.
The Lost Children. So Lana Steele Rose fans out there, you know where to mail those rotten eggs. I take the blame.
Well, I'm
Just
sure
know that your girl came very close to taking the prize.
and I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more do a powerbomb on this ballot because I know we do because it's there. So it's been getting a lot of love. So excellent.
Yep. It's one thing that emerged. Every year we learn about comics that weren't on our radar during the past year that should have been, thanks to you, the listeners, telling us so in your nominations and such. So we will check that out.
Indeed. All right, moving on to Best New Villain or Villain Team, which debuted in 2022. And your nominees are Failsafe, Mickey Mixie Pariah, and Playtime from Minor Threats. And the Jamie goes to Failsafe with the win. Congratulations to Failsafe.
Yep, and this was a landslide victory for Failsafe too, folks. Yeah, there's a lot of Gotham City love in the awards this year, as happens most year, it seems. Yep, so yep, Failsafe ran away with that one.
Yeah, and it's a great choice, and that was a terrific Zdarsky arc, and super glad that it got the love that it deserves.
Okay. Number 3, Best New Ongoing Comic. First issue shipped in 2022. The nominees were Avengers Forever, Batman Superman World's Finest, Public Domain, and She-Hulk. And the winner is Batman Superman World's Finest.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yep. Another landslide victory. It received 4 times the votes of the runner-up in this category.
Wow.
But it's a darn good comic.
Yep, it is indeed.
Yep, heck of a creative team on that one.
Yeah.
You better believe it. And now they're starting up Shazam, and I can't wait to read the first issue in next week.
Yep, that's the world's mightiest mortal is going to be in the best hands he's been in a couple of decades, I would say.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, which brings us now to our 4th category, which I will read myself. Best Limited Series of 2022. And it must be, and the rule is the final issue must have been published in the year, or released in the year 2022. The nominees there are Batman, Catwoman, The Lion and the Eagle from Aftershock and Garth Ennis, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and X-Men, House of XCII, or 92. And the winner is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow.
Great choice. Great choice.
Yep. Soon to be a major motion picture.
Yes. All right. Next up is Best Single Issue / One Shot of 2022. This is a damn good list. The nominees are Astro City, That Was Then, Batman, One Bad Day, The Riddler, Tales of the Human Target, and Thanos, Death Notes. And the winner is Batman, One Bad Day, The Riddler.
Excellent.
Yep, Gotham City takes home another Jamie here.
Yep. It's been a very Batman year. All right, moving on to Best Cliffhanger or Moment. Jack of Hearts lives in She-Hulk #1. One Punch, not One Punch Man, One Punch. Human Target #6. And let me clear those pipes. Zergar! Batman #126. And our winner is not 3 punches, not 2 punches, 1 punch. Human Target #6.
As it should be.
Yes, and that moment, as presented to us by Tom King and Greg Smallwood, was poetry. Man, it's a pretty short field in the best cliffhanger or moment category this year, because there was astoundingly zero consensus among the listeners nominating. Nobody nominated the same thing. No two people nominated the same thing. That's why we had just the three to choose from. But those three, it was a three-way horse race between them, and one punch, that magical moment from the human target number 6, won by a single vote. Wow.
Wow.
Wow. That's a great field right there.
Yep.
Excellent.
All right.
Moving on, Shano.
Best storyline within a series or across multiple series. The nominees are Axe Judgment Day, Batman Failsafe, The Crystal Run, Han Solo and Chewbacca, Nightwing Cleans Up Bloodhaven, and What Did Peter Do? Amazing Spider-Man. And the winner is Batman Failsafe.
Haha.
Oh, Batman is just cleaning up.
Yeah,
this
you're
year.
not kidding.
Holy
Wow.
mackerel.
And alive. Wow.
Thank you for that screenshot
Yes.
of the, what the Jamie Award would look like if it were a physical object.
Yes, indeed. Yep.
All right, so that moves us on to another pretty long slate of nominees in the category Best Sleeper or Surprise Hit. Our nominees there are 8 Billion Genies from Image Comics, Giant Size Gwen Stacy, the new Ghost Rider series, The Nice House on the Lake, a DC horror offering, the Poison Ivy solo series, and once again, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And the Jamie goes to Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, taking home its second award of the evening.
A dose.
And Tom King also cleaning up tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Who is not a breakthrough talent this year.
No, he is not.
He's disqualified a couple times over.
Exactly. Nice.
All right. Best ongoing comic, very prestigious award. Need not have begun publication 2022. The nominees are The Amazing Spider-Man, The Flash, Nightwing, and appropriately Saga. And the victor is as it should be, Nightwing.
Yes. Well deserved.
Yep.
Taylor and Redondo taking it home for Best Ongoing for the second year in a row, I might
Yep.
add.
Yep.
Wow.
Keeps being great. Well deserved. Well deserved. Excellent.
Really looking forward to that point of view issue coming out.
Oh,
Oh, baby. Yep. Gonna be so pretty. So pretty. Gonna be a whole bunch of pages that could probably become posters. They could make the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
All right. Onward to Best Graphic Novel album, that is, OGN or Collection. And our choices are as follows. Fantastic Four, Full Circle, by the one and only Alex Ross. Friday, Book 2, On a Cold Winter's Night. The one that should have won, no matter what, The Illustrated Al, The Songs of Weird Al Yankovic, and Saga Volume 10. And the winner is one of the damn prettiest graphic albums you can possibly find, Fantastic Four, Full Circle.
gorgeous.
Good deal.
Yep. And it won by a landslide. And many of these are not really very close. A lot of these are runaway victories. But I'm happy to say that the Illustrated Al did get a handful of votes.
Good.
Matter of fact, I'm very pleased with the distribution of the voting, actually. I always feel kind of bad when certain nominees get 0 votes. But that happened only in one instance in this year's voting. Only one thing got no votes from anybody.
Okay.
So I'm just glad that everybody got a little bit of love, except Giant Size Gwen Stacy. I'm sorry. That was the one thing that got no votes. Sorry, Chris.
That's all right. Maybe some people will read it now that we've talked about it.
That's true. You're right.
Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah,
right.
I would if they had published it as single issues as they began to, but it raises my hackles whenever a publisher starts to publish a miniseries and then you have to buy a trade, which you're basically rebuying the issues you already bought.
Well, it's like a thick comic.
That's true.
Yeah.
Half of which I already own. Nothing against the creative team. It was a great story. The little bit of it I do have, and But yeah, anyway.
Well, after all, we all have one staunch rule on the show, and that's we never double dip. We've never done it. None of us.
That was like Orwellian, man. That was completely untrue in every way, shape, and form.
Lies around it. Lies.
How many versions of JLA do you have, Shane?
Of the Justice League, oh gosh, the Mateus one, issues, 2 versions of the trade, hardback, and I do have the omnibus of that, even though
Wow, he broke his omnibus rule.
Of the omnibus, yeah.
Well, we
And
never
then I have-
double dip.
And then I have the 6th version, which is the one that the guys put together for my birthday one year with comic binding. So I have 6 different versions of Justice League floating around the house.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm not getting it again.
you are. You're totally.
Yeah, I ordered volume 1 of Strangers in previews last week because I want to have a copy to give to somebody. Because I'm not giving up my copies, but I think it's a book worth giving out to people to read.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Proselytize, baby. Proselytize.
Yeah.
Shane, you're up.
All right, best writer. Nominees are Christopher Cantwell, Tom King, Tom Taylor, Mark Waid, and Chip Zdarsky.
Wow. What a
What a
The
crew.
winner is Tom King.
Ha Wow.
Yep,
you
it's
could have
been
picked
pretty widely-
any of those guys for that.
Yeah, my gosh.
That award.
Yeah,
To read that list, my goodness.
it's been pretty widely remarked among the listenership that it was a murderer's row of talent, and how the heck do you
Yeah.
choose? But the people have spoken, and after losing the award to Tom Taylor last year, Tom King is back up on top. He takes the best writer award this year.
Was this a tight vote, Murd? Or?
Tighter than most, yes.
Yeah,
But still a clear, comfortable margin of victory there for Tom King.
absolutely. Yep. All right.
Okay. Which brings us to the Best Artist Award for 2022. The nominees there were Dan Mora, Bruno Redondo, Daniel Samper, and Greg Smallwood, all gentlemen best known for work for DC this year. And the winner there... Greg Smallwood.
Oh,
Yes. Wow.
Yes, and by a pretty slim margin, and Dan Mora was a close runner-up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
all right. Best writer artist. So the whole creative package in one set of hands. The nominees are Jeremy Bastian, Cliff Chang, Daniel Warren Johnson, and Chip Zdarsky.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to prevail? Chip Zdarsky,
Aha.
public domain, among
Yep.
other things, of course.
Of course.
This was another close one here. It came down to last year's winner, Daniel Warren Johnson, and Chip Zdarsky, but Zdarsky had the edge in the end.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Also has one of the more fun newsletters in all of comic books. Chip Zdarsky. All right, over to Best Color Artist. And our choices are Jordi Belair, my favorite name in comics, Tamara Bonvillain, Greg Smallwood, and Jose Villarrubia. And the winner is... Oh, he's just everywhere. Greg Smallwood.
Well, the coloring on Human Target is
Oh, outstanding.
Nice superhuman.
I mean, talk about elevating that story. It's phenomenal.
It's every issue of that book is like an entire comic of nothing but great, like
Yeah.
painted,
Everything.
like pulp covers.
Yep.
Yep. And this is his second best color artist. Best of award / Jamie in a row.
Nice. Nice.
Cool. All right. Best letterer. The nominees are Joe Camarnaga. Did I say that right? Camarnaga?
I think it's Caramanga, isn't it?
Carmanga.
It's either Caramagna or Caramagna. I'm not sure how the GN is gonna
Okay.
be pronounced there.
Clayton Cowles, Todd Klein, Tom Napolitano, and Joe Sabino. And the winner is Clayton Cowles.
Excellent.
Yep, it was a runaway for Clayton Cowles, who takes home his second Best of / Jamie Award in a row for Best Letterer.
Fantastic.
Incidentally, the runner-up in the color artist category was Jordy Belair, so that one was at least a little bit close.
Nice.
Okay, and that brings us through to one of the most interesting awards in the slate, and also annually the last to be given out. It's our version of Best Picture. Breakthrough Talent of 2022. Now, the qualifications are always a bit contested here, but the final slate we came up with are David Hazen, Jackson Lansing, and Colin Kelly, a dual nominee there for their writing partnership, Dan Mora, Jacob Phillips, Rainbow Rowell, and Cody Ziegler. Big group. But the final Jamie of the evening will be awarded to Dan Mora.
Well deserved.
Now, it is at this point that I need to offer, hat in hand, a personal apology to the CGS Nation, because those of you who looked up the slate of nominees on Facebook or our old forum site, you will have noticed that Greg Smallwood's name appeared on the ballot there. It should not have been there. That was a clerical error on my part. He was actually nominated last year, and he won. So he was last year's Breakthrough Talent of 2021. So he should not be eligible, but I accidentally got his name into the ballot this year, and he got so many votes that he tied for first place. So it's foregone conclusion he can't break through a second time. But
Murd, all is forgiven.
Easy for me to declare Dan Mora the winner there, but I just apologize to those people who voted for Greg Smallwood this year, being misled by me that he was eligible. But I don't think that... I suspect that most of the people who voted for Smallwood would have had Dan Mora as a second choice anyway, so I don't think...
I would agree.
Yeah, really
Murd, once again, outstanding work. It's always something to look forward to every year. Well done, my friend.
And a reminder, even though Greg Smallwood accidentally wound up on there, now that Dan Mora has broken through, he cannot break through again. There must be a new breakthrough talent this upcoming year when the best ofs come around.
Levy Pooh, nice bringing the drum roll into the proceedings this year.
Thank you. I was asked in advance by Mr. Murd to get a little bit of fanfare in there, and I acted accordingly.
Really snazz things up, Ian.
Next time, a cymbal.
or it might just be the Batman noise the entire
Like on the Gong Show, my God.
Exactly.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Well, especially now that we have our own CGS one, I can certainly throw that one in there as well. Let me see. Can I bring that up?
We have a CGS Batman.
Yeah, courtesy of Mr. Fusion, Tom Martinet.
Wow, I don't know if I heard that.
I owe Tom a little extra thanks too, because he emailed Peter and me the image from the Iron Man movie where the CGS logo is hidden.
Oh,
hold on.
Nice.
There was this.
I'm gonna play it so we can actually see it on the video. But yes, that's here we are. Real quick. Voila.
That's awesome.
Yep. That's
we're going to get so much mileage out of that. We're just any flimsy excuse to put that graphic on the screen, we will use. We're going to run it into the ground.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And Tom sent us that right when we started doing the zooms, and I forgot about it for forever. And then when I had that insertion of the Star Trek news for the new series that they announced, I put that into the video, and that's the first time we ran it, and now it's going to run nonstop. Trust us.
Oh my God. That has to be in every other word for a while. Well. And Murd, if that picture is of a fairly high quality, forward that on to me. I have bad screen captures that I get off of my TV, but I would like a better version of that.
Nope. This was sent to me straight from the programmer, so I don't
awesome.
think a better quality image will exist. So yeah, I will happily forward that to you later on, Shane.
That's cool.
Fantastic.
Yes, I absolutely smile from ear to ear every time I watch Iron Man and that goes across.
For a damn good reason. Yep.
Uh-huh. Indeed.
Nice. All right, gents, I think that's about it. But glad to have done both things tonight. It filled me with great joy.
Mm-hmm.
Here, here.
Same here, Ian.
Absolutely. And a reminder once again that you find folks help this happen over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. We would not be here without your help, and we thank you for every little bit that you throw in there, no matter how small. Patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you.
Thank you.
Every little thing you do is magic.
Ooh,
Ooh.
Shane, little police moment. I like that.
Nicely done.
I didn't want to go too long. I was afraid we get dinged.
No, that's fine. If you're just singing it and we don't actually have the background music in and everything like that.
Oh, cool.
You could probably karaoke
Right.
the whole damn thing. It'll be perfectly fine. But
Okay.
don't.
So lonely, so lonely. Sorry.
And meanwhile, the role of Shane will be played by Shane.
Hello.
Thank you, robot voice.
Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com. To send an email, the address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-66642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. To look us up on YouTube, it's youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Thank you to everyone who contributes to the episodes. Please send in your Muddles the Murds because we're running low. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes one listener at a time.
Wow, Comic Geek Speak. That's a great name for that.
Etchy.